So good evening. We've got John Henden here with us tonight. Welcome to Dunedin, all the way from the UK.
Thank
John.
you. Yeah.
Your first time here?
No, my second time. I was here about 8 years ago doing some suicide prevention training. I can't remember where it was, but it was about 8 years ago, and we did also some training in Christchurch and Wellington.
So we've got you down in Dunedin, and you are delivering a workshop tomorrow for us.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Zero suicide, solution focused.
Yes. Well, solution focused suicide prevention. Yes, I've been involved in the field for over 25 years. Excuse me. And I brought out a book in 2008 entitled Preventing Suicide, the Solution Focused Approach. And all individuals and teams I've trained in now up to 20 countries worldwide have reported zero suicide in their caseloads, which is fantastic news. And what motivates me and keeps me going is constant tales, anecdotes and of lives saved by people using solution-focused techniques and just the simple questions, really, which gets the suicidal person thinking that there is another option.
So it's to create hope.
Yes, hope and optimism are two important factors. And I say to people, the trainees on training courses, how can someone who's suicidal, who's feeling hopeless and lonely and despairing, how can they take their lives if they detect that the helper is hopeful for them? It becomes impossible because they want to explore that before they make any further decisions, which is great.
So does that take a lot of time, or is this like a instant fix? How does one...
Well, it's amazing actually. I mean, I have trained both professionals and untrained lay people, helpline operators, volunteers in many cases, workers in prisons who don't have any professional qualification, and just by knowing which question to ask the suicidal person, they just know what question to ask at the right time, and that just seems to unlock things. And the way the solution-focused approach works, it doesn't try to take away the suicide option, which many approaches do. This keeps it on the table alongside other options that can be generated. And paradoxically, the person doesn't take it because there are these other more constructive options available.
So you come from a place of empathy, and you kind of put yourself in the person's shoes?
Yes, very much so. And I talk about deep empathy. And deep empathy.
Yeah.
And a psychiatrist colleague of mine back in the UK, Alice Cole-King, she talks about compassion. And her compassion is my deep empathy. And there's another colleague called Joy Hibbins who had an appalling experience at the hands of the psychiatric system, and while she was going through it, she said to herself, if I get through this alive, I'm going to set up my own service. And she did. About 3 years ago she set up the Gloucester Suicide Crisis Service in the UK, and she has had many highly suicidal individuals referred, and again, not one suicide. So it is possible. Zero suicide is possible. There are many stories throughout the world, and I have to say that I'm a recent adherent of the adherent to the zero suicide movement, and 28 countries worldwide have signed up to this now.
So New Zealand is not ready to sign up yet.
I'm not sure whether New Zealand is a signatory. And what the zero suicide movement says is that we should aim for zero suicide in health and social care.
Exactly.
So that no one should die in despair and alone in our care.
Absolutely. So it's all about training for those key frontline people.
Key training for frontline people.
Yeah.
And they need to be trained in, as you say, empathy
Yeah.
and acceptance, empathy and genuineness, really relating to people and their pain, and then moving on from there, building up rapport and trust. And they need to know the right things to say.
Yeah.
And that's where solution-focused suicide
perfect.
prevention training comes to the fore.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this, John.
My pleasure.